Dr. Sarah Chen wiped the sweat from her forehead as she finished treating another injured animal at the refugee camp's makeshift veterinary clinic. 3 years had passed since the Zephyrian invasion fleet arrived on Earth, and humanity had been relocated to designated zones across the planet. Most humans worked in factories or farms. But Sarah's veterinary skills had earned her a special position, caring for Earth's remaining wildlife in preservation zones. The morning started like any other, until a massive shadow blocked out the sun. Sarah looked up to see a Zephyrian royal transport descending toward the camp. These ships only appeared when something important was happening. The elongated vessel, gleaming like polished obsidian, landed with barely a whisper despite its enormous size. 3 tall insectoid Zephyrians emerged from the craft. Their exoskeletons gleamed with a blue-green sheen, and their compound eyes reflected the morning light like jewels. Sarah had seen Zephyrians before, but these wore the golden bands of the royal court around their necks. The lead figure approached her clinic with purposeful strides. Human veterinarian, the alien spoke through its translation device, the mechanical voice carrying an undertone of urgency. You will come with us immediately. Her Royal Majesty Queen Zethera requires your services. Sarah's hands trembled as she set down her medical instruments. No human had ever been summoned to the royal court. The few who had been taken to Zephyrian ships never returned. I'm just a simple animal doctor, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. I don't think I can help with whatever the Queen needs. The Zephyrian's head tilted in what might have been confusion. You misunderstand, human. The Queen's most precious companion has fallen ill. Our finest healers cannot determine the cause. You have been selected because your species shows unusual empathy toward non-sentient creatures. Sarah felt her heart racing. The other humans in the camp were watching from a distance, their faces filled with fear and pity. They thought she was being taken to her death. Maybe she was, but something in the alien's posture suggested genuine desperation rather than threat. What kind of companion? Sarah asked, gathering her basic medical kit from habit. A creature unlike any other, the Zephyrian replied. One that has bonded with our queen since her youth. If it dies, Her Majesty may not survive the grief. Our empire has searched 12 star systems for a healer capable of treating this beast. You are our final hope. As Sarah walked toward the transport, her mind raced with possibilities. What kind of animal could bond so deeply with an alien queen? And why would they think a human veterinarian could succeed where their advanced medical technology had failed? The transport's interior was surprisingly warm and comfortable, with soft lighting that didn't hurt her human eyes. During the journey to the royal ship, the lead Zephyrian introduced himself as Commander Vex. He explained that the Queen's companion had been refusing food for 7 days and showed signs of deep distress. Their medical scanners could find nothing wrong, but the creature was clearly dying. Why me? Sarah asked as they docked with the massive royal vessel. Surely you have veterinarians of your own. Commander Vex paused at the airlock. We do not keep non-sentient creatures as companions. In our culture, only the Queen is permitted this privilege, and only with this particular beast. We know nothing of animal psychology or medicine. Our healers treat sentient beings with logical minds. This creature operates on instincts we do not understand. The royal ship was beyond anything Sarah had imagined. Corridors stretched for what seemed like miles, filled with bioluminescent plants and flowing water features. The air smelled of exotic flowers and carried a faint electric charge that made her skin tingle. Zephyrian courtiers stopped their activities to stare as she passed. Some whispered among themselves in their clicking language. They arrived at a massive chamber with walls that seemed to be made of living crystal. In the center of the room stood Queen Zethera herself. Sarah had only seen images of the Queen before, but in person she was magnificent, nearly 8 feet tall, with an exoskeleton that shifted between deep purple and silver. She radiated an aura of absolute authority. Crystalline formations grew from her shoulders and head like a crown, and her forearms moved with fluid grace. But the Queen's compound eyes, usually described as cold and calculating by human witnesses, now showed something Sarah recognized immediately. Grief. Pure, overwhelming grief. Beside the Queen lay the most unusual creature Sarah had ever seen. At first glance, it resembled a cross between a large cat and a lizard, with iridescent scales that covered most of its body, except for patches of soft, fur-like growth along its spine. Its size was impressive, easily as large as a tiger. But it lay completely still except for the shallow rise and fall of its breathing. Human healer. Queen Zuthera's voice resonated through the chamber without need for translation devices. My beloved Shimmer has been my companion for 23 years. She has never been ill, never shown weakness, yet now she wastes away before my eyes. Can you help her? Sarah approached slowly, noting how the Queen's massive hand gently stroked the creature's head. The gesture was so human-like, so filled with love and concern that Sarah felt her fear begin to fade. This wasn't about alien politics or conquest. This was about a pet owner desperate to save their beloved companion. May I examine her, Your Majesty? Sarah asked, kneeling beside the creature. The Queen nodded, watching intently as Sarah began her examination. Shimmer's vital signs seemed stable, but her eyes were dull and unfocused. Her beautiful scales had lost their luster, and she barely responded to touch. As Sarah ran her hands along the creature's body, she noticed something the advanced Zephyrian scanners had missed. There was something deeply wrong here, but it wasn't physical. Sarah spent the next hour conducting a thorough examination, while Queen Zythera watched every movement with intense focus. Shimmer's physical condition was puzzling. Her heart rate was strong, her breathing clear, and her body temperature normal. Yet the creature seemed to be fading away like a flower deprived of sunlight. Your Majesty, Sarah said carefully, can you tell me about Shimmer's recent behavior? Has anything changed in her environment or routine? The Queen's crystalline crown formations dimmed slightly, a sign of deep thought among Zephyrians. Nothing has changed. She eats the same food, sleeps in the same chamber, follows the same daily patterns. The only difference is... The Queen paused, her four hands clenching and unclenching nervously. What difference? Sarah encouraged gently. 7 days ago, I had to leave for an emergency diplomatic mission to the Outer Rim. I was gone for 3 days. When I returned, Shimmer was like this. The Queen's voice carried a note of guilt that transcended species barriers, but she has been alone before. This should not affect her so severely. Sarah nodded, pieces of the puzzle beginning to form in her mind. She had seen similar symptoms in Earth animals, but never to this extreme degree. Your Majesty, may I ask how you and Shimmer first met? The Queen's posture softened, and for a moment she seemed less like an alien conqueror and more like any pet owner remembering better times. I was very young, barely past my first molting. My royal duties had just begun, and I felt the weight of the Empire crushing down upon me. During a state visit to the planet Zerion, I discovered Shimmer as a juvenile, injured and abandoned in the ruins of an ancient temple. As the Queen spoke, she continued stroking Shimmer's head with surprising gentleness. The local healers said she would not survive. Her species, the Lumicats, were thought to be extinct, but I could not leave her to die alone. I stayed with her for days, nursing her back to health with my own hands. Sarah listened intently, recognizing the deep bond that had formed between them. What happened when she recovered? Something unprecedented occurred, the Queen continued, her eyes taking on a distant look. Lumicats are telepathic creatures, but only with their own kind. Somehow Shimmer formed a mental connection with me. I could sense her emotions, and she could sense mine. She became more than a companion. She became part of my very soul. The revelation hit Sarah like a lightning bolt. She had heard of such deep psychological bonds between humans and their pets, but this was something far more intense. A literal psychic connection between two completely different species. Your Majesty, I believe Shimmer is suffering from acute separation anxiety, but on a level far beyond what most creatures experience. When you left, she didn't just miss you emotionally. She lost part of her mental connection to life itself. Queen Zythera's compound eyes widened in what Sarah interpreted as surprise, but our healers found no mental disturbance. Her brain patterns appeared normal. That's because they were looking for disease or injury, Sarah explained. What Shimmer is experiencing is purely psychological. In human medicine, we call it broken heart syndrome. The emotional trauma is so severe that it manifests as physical illness, even though nothing is technically wrong with the body. The Queen stood abruptly, her tall frame towering over Sarah. Then how do we heal a broken heart? Our technology cannot mend emotions. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. The most powerful being in the known galaxy was looking to her for answers, and she wasn't even sure if her theory was correct. But she had to try. The healing has to come from love and connection, not medicine. Shimmer needs to know that you'll never leave her again, but more importantly, she needs to trust that the connection between you is unbreakable. I have told her this repeatedly since my return, the Queen said, frustrated. I have not left her side except when absolutely necessary. Telling isn't enough, Sarah said gently. Shimmer is a telepathic creature living in a state of emotional trauma. Words can't reach her right now. The connection needs to be rebuilt through actions, through presence, through shared experiences that prove your bond is stronger than any separation. Sarah looked around the crystal chamber, noting its sterile beauty. Your Majesty, where did you and Shimmer spend your happiest times together? The Queen considered this question for several moments. In the royal gardens. There is a section I cultivated myself, filled with plants from Xerion where we first met. Shimmer loved to hunt the small creatures that lived among the flowers. She would bring me her catches as gifts and I would praise her hunting skills. We would spend hours there together just enjoying each other's company. Then that's where we need to take her, Sarah said firmly. Shimmer needs familiar scents, familiar activities, and familiar joy. She needs to remember what it feels like to be happy with you. Commander Vex, who had remained silent throughout the examination, stepped forward. Human healer, Shimmer has not eaten in 7 days. She can barely lift her head. How can we move her to the gardens? Sarah had considered this problem. In her years of veterinary practice, she had learned that sometimes the most effective medicine was the simplest. We don't move her. We bring the garden to her. The Queen's head tilted in confusion. Explain. We recreate the environment that made Shimmer happiest right here in this chamber. We bring the plants, the smells, the sounds. We make this space feel like home again. Then, Your Majesty, you need to do something that might seem undignified for a queen. What do you ask of me? Queen Zithera said without hesitation. You need to play with her, like you did when she was young. Like you did before the weight of empire made you forget how to simply enjoy each other's company. Sarah took a deep breath. You need to help her remember that she's not just surviving. She's living. The Queen stared at Sarah for a long moment, then looked down at Shimmer's still form. If there is even the smallest chance this will help her, I will do whatever is necessary. As they began planning the transformation of the chamber, Sarah felt a small spark of hope. She was about to attempt something that had never been tried before. Healing an alien creature's broken heart using nothing but love and determination. The fate of an interstellar empire's most powerful leader hung in the balance, and success depended entirely on the power of the bond between two unlikely friends. Within hours, the crystal chamber had been transformed into something magical. Royal gardeners worked alongside engineers to install growing beds filled with soil from Xerion. The air filtration system was modified to carry the specific scents of the Queen's private garden. Bioluminescent flowers cast dancing shadows on the walls, while small water features created the gentle sounds of flowing streams. Sarah watched in amazement as the Zephyrian workforce moved with incredible efficiency. Despite being an insectoid species known for their logical approach to everything, they handled this emotional mission with surprising care. Even the royal guards seemed to understand the importance of their task. The habitat creatures have been transported as well, Commander Vex reported to the Queen. Small, herbivores and flying insects native to Xerion, all healthy and ready for release into the chamber environment. Queen Zithera knelt beside Shimmer, who had shown no response to the bustling activity around her. My beloved friend, the Queen whispered, your hunting grounds have come to you. Please give me a sign that you remember the joy we once shared. Sarah observed the Queen's interaction with growing understanding. In all her years treating animals, she had learned that the bond between a pet and their owner was often the most powerful healing force available. But she had never witnessed anything like the deep psychic connection these two shared. It was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. Your Majesty, Sarah said carefully, when Shimmer was young and first recovering from her injuries, what did you do to make her feel safe? The Queen's eyes took on that distant look again. I would lie beside her and let her rest against my body. My natural electromagnetic field seemed to comfort her. I would hum the ancient songs of my people and she would purr in harmony with the vibrations. Can you do that now? Sarah asked. Without hesitation, Queen Zithera carefully positioned herself on the soft moss that now covered the floor and gently lifted Shimmer's head onto her lap. The Queen's crystalline formations began to glow with a soft pulsing light, and she started to hum a melody that seemed to resonate through the chamber itself. For the first time since Sarah's arrival, Shimmer's ears twitched slightly. It was a small movement, barely noticeable, but it was a response. "She hears you," Sarah said excitedly. "The connection is still there. It's just buried under layers of fear and abandonment." Over the next few hours, Sarah worked alongside the Queen to slowly reawaken Shimmer's interest in life. They started with gentle physical therapy, moving her limbs to prevent muscle deterioration. Then Sarah suggested something that made several royal advisors gasp in shock. "Your Majesty needs to get down on the floor and play like Shimmer's littermate," Sarah explained. "Forget about dignity and protocol. Shimmer needs to see the person she bonded with, not the queen of an empire." It was Commander Vex who surprised everyone by speaking first. "Human healer, what you ask is unprecedented. Her Majesty has not behaved in such a manner since her youth." "Then maybe it's time she remembered what it felt like to be young," Sarah replied boldly. Queen Zuthera looked around at her advisors, then down at Shimmer's still form. "Leave us," she commanded. "All of you except the human healer. This is not a matter of state. This is personal." As the chamber emptied, Sarah felt the weight of the moment. She was alone with the most powerful being in the known galaxy, who was about to abandon all royal pretense for the sake of a dying pet. It was either going to be the most touching thing she had ever witnessed, or it would end very badly for her. The Queen carefully lowered herself to the moss-covered floor and began to move in ways that seemed almost childlike. She rolled a glowing orb across the ground near Shimmer's nose, making soft clicking sounds that must have been Zephyrian baby talk. She gently tickled behind Shimmer's ears and along her spine, areas that would have been grooming spots for her own species. "Remember when you caught your first flutterwing?" The Queen cooed in a voice Sarah had never heard her use. "You were so proud, bringing it to me like a great treasure. I praised you for hours, told you what a magnificent hunter you were." Shimmer's tail moved slightly, the first voluntary movement Sarah had seen from her. Encouraged, the Queen continued her playful behavior. She picked up one of the small creatures that had been introduced to the chamber and held it in her upper hands while making exaggerated hunting movements with her lower arms. "Look, my dear one. Fresh prey, just waiting for a skilled hunter to catch them." This time Shimmer's head lifted slightly and her nostrils flared as she caught the scent of potential prey. "That's it," Sarah whispered. "She's responding to the hunt instinct. That's one of the most fundamental drives for predatory species." The Queen released the small creature, which scurried across the floor directly in front of Shimmer's face. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, Shimmer's paw moved forward in a weak but deliberate swipe at the passing animal. The Queen's crystalline crown blazed with excitement. "Yes, my beautiful hunter, show me your skills." Over the next hour, Shimmer gradually became more responsive. Her movements were still weak, but she was engaging with her environment for the first time in days. Sarah watched in fascination as the Queen continued to behave like a playful companion rather than a dignified ruler. "Your Majesty," Sarah said, during a brief pause in the activity, "I think it's time to address the core issue. Shimmer needs to understand that even when you're physically apart, the emotional connection remains unbroken." The Queen nodded solemnly. "How do we accomplish this?" "I cannot promise never to leave again. My duties to the Empire are too important." "We practice," Sarah said simply. "We start with very short separations, then gradually increase them. Each time you leave, you give Shimmer something that carries your scent and your emotional imprint. Each time you return, you reinforce the connection through play and bonding. Eventually she'll learn that separation is temporary, but your bond is permanent." As if she understood the conversation, Shimmer lifted her head higher than she had in days and looked directly at her beloved Queen. The love and trust in that gaze was unmistakable. Crossing all species barriers, the healing had begun. 3 days into the treatment, Shimmer had made remarkable progress. She was eating small amounts of food, drinking water regularly, and showing interest in her surroundings. More importantly, she had begun to respond to the Queen's emotional state, purring when the Queen was happy and nuzzling against her when she sensed anxiety. Sarah had established a routine of gradual separation exercises. The Queen would leave the chamber for increasingly longer periods, always leaving behind a piece of her clothing that carried her scent. At first, Shimmer would become agitated within minutes, but slowly, she was learning to trust that the Queen would return. "The progress is remarkable," Commander Vex observed as he watched Shimmer successfully catch one of the small chamber creatures. "Our medical staff is amazed by the recovery rate. They are requesting detailed notes on human healing methods. Sarah laughed softly. It's not really human healing. It's just recognizing that some problems can't be solved with technology. Sometimes the oldest medicine is still the best medicine. As she spoke, Sarah noticed something interesting happening. Other members of the royal court had begun visiting the chamber to observe Shimmer's recovery. At first, they came out of curiosity about the strange human healing methods. But gradually, Sarah realized they were genuinely invested in Shimmer's well-being. Commander Vex, Sarah asked, did the court members know Shimmer before she became ill? Oh yes, the commander replied, his mechanical translator somehow conveying fondness. Shimmer has been part of court life for over 2 decades. She has attended state dinners, greeted foreign dignitaries, and even participated in ceremonial hunts. Many of us have watched her grow from a small injured creature into the magnificent being she became. Sarah felt a new understanding dawn, so when Shimmer became ill, it wasn't just the queen who was affected. The entire court was worried about her. Indeed, though we would never admit it publicly, Shimmer has become something of a court mascot. Her presence brightened even the most tedious diplomatic meetings. This revelation gave Sarah an idea that could strengthen Shimmer's recovery even further. Commander, would it be possible to arrange for some of the regular court members to spend time with Shimmer during the Queen's absences? Not as guards or caretakers, but as friends who genuinely care about her? The commander's compound eyes reflected Sarah's image as he considered the request. It is highly irregular, but given the success of your other unconventional methods, I believe Her Majesty would approve. That evening, as Sarah was preparing her daily report on Shimmer's condition, Queen Zathera approached her with a question that caught her completely off guard. Dr. Chen, the Queen said, using Sarah's title for the first time, I have been wondering about your own emotional state. You have been separated from your own kind for many days now. Do you not suffer from the same anxiety that nearly killed my beloved Shimmer? Sarah paused in her note-taking, surprised by the Queen's perceptiveness. I do miss my home and my work, she admitted. But I knew this separation was temporary and purposeful. Shimmer didn't have that understanding. But surely you have bonded with creatures of your own, the Queen continued. Do you not have a companion similar to Shimmer? A wave of sadness washed over Sarah as she remembered her old dog Max, who had died just months before the Zephyrian invasion. I did, she said quietly. He was with me for 12 years. When he died, I thought I understood pet grief. But seeing you and Shimmer has shown me that some bonds go far deeper than I ever imagined. The Queen's posture softened with what Sarah now recognized as empathy. I am sorry for your loss, Dr. Chen. The death of a beloved companion leaves scars that never fully heal. Thank you, Your Majesty. But helping Shimmer has actually helped me heal too. Sometimes the best way to process your own grief is to help others with theirs. This conversation marked a turning point in Sarah's relationship with the Queen. Over the following days, as Shimmer continued to improve, they found themselves talking not just about animal behavior and healing techniques, but about the nature of friendship, loyalty, and love across species barriers. Sarah learned that Queen Zathera had ascended to power at a very young age after her parents died in a plague outbreak. The weight of ruling an interstellar empire had isolated her from normal relationships. Shimmer had been her only source of unconditional love and companionship. Do your people not form such bonds? The Queen asked during one of their conversations. We do, Sarah replied. In fact, the bond between humans and their pets is one of our species' greatest strengths. We've learned that caring for other creatures teaches us empathy, responsibility, and unconditional love. Some of our greatest leaders have been people who understood the value of these relationships. Yet when we arrived on your world, your people resisted us with such violence, the Queen observed. Because you were taking away our freedom, Sarah said carefully. Just like Shimmer became ill when she lost her sense of security with you. Humans become desperate when they lose their autonomy and connection to the things they love. The Queen was quiet for a long time after this exchange. Sarah worried that she had overstepped boundaries, but the Queen seemed to be processing the comparison rather than taking offense. The breakthrough came during the 4th night of treatment. Sarah was sleeping on a comfortable couch that had been provided for her when she was awakened by an unusual sound. Shimmer was singing. It wasn't quite like any animal vocalization Sarah had heard before. The sound was melodic, complex, and hauntingly beautiful. Shimmer was lying beside the Queen, both of them glowing with soft bioluminescent light, creating a harmony that seemed to resonate through the chamber itself. They're rebuilding their psychic connection, Sarah whispered to herself in amazement. The healing isn't just physical or emotional. It's actually restoring their telepathic bond. As she watched the two friends reconnect on a level deeper than words, Sarah realized she was witnessing something unprecedented in interspecies relations. This wasn't just about treating a sick animal. This was about understanding that love and compassion could transcend any barrier, whether it was species culture or even the vast distances between stars. The real healing was just beginning. By the end of the first week, Shimmer had made a complete physical recovery. She was hunting actively, eating with enthusiasm and displaying all the behaviors of a healthy Lumicat. But more importantly, her bond with Queen Zythera had evolved into something even stronger than before. Sarah observed their interactions with growing fascination. The separation anxiety that had nearly killed Shimmer had been replaced by a more mature understanding of their relationship. The Queen could now leave for several hours without Shimmer becoming distressed, and when they reunited, their joy was infectious to everyone in the chamber. Dr. Chen, Commander Vex, approached her during one of these reunion sessions. Her Majesty has requested a private audience with you. There is a matter of great importance she wishes to discuss. Sarah felt a familiar flutter of nervousness. Private audiences with alien queens were still not something she was comfortable with, despite their growing friendship. Did she say what it was about? She did not. But I believe it concerns your future here aboard our vessel. An hour later, Sarah found herself in the Queen's formal audience chamber, a vast space filled with floating crystal formations and holographic displays showing various worlds throughout the Empire. Queen Zythera sat on her throne, but her posture was relaxed rather than imposing. Dr. Chen, the Queen began, your healing methods have accomplished what our most advanced medical technology could not. You have not only saved Shimmer's life, but you have taught us something profound about the nature of emotional bonds and psychological healing. Sarah bowed respectfully. I'm honored to have been able to help, Your Majesty. Shimmer is truly a remarkable creature, and your love for her made the healing possible. Which brings me to my proposal, the Queen continued. I would like you to remain here as our chief xenobiological consultant. You would oversee the medical care of all non-Zephyrian creatures throughout the Empire. The position would come with significant resources, your own research facility, and the authority to establish new protocols for interspecies animal care. The offer was beyond anything Sarah could have imagined. To work with alien creatures throughout the galaxy, to study and help species that no human had ever seen, would be the opportunity of a lifetime, but there was something that held her back. Your Majesty, that is an incredible honor, but I have a question. What about Earth? What about the humans who are still suffering under the occupation? The Queen's crystalline formations dimmed slightly. I understand your concern for your own species, but surely you realize that individual actions cannot change the course of interstellar politics. Maybe not, Sarah said carefully, but individual compassion changed everything for Shimmer. When you stopped seeing her as just a pet and started seeing her as a friend who needed understanding, everything became possible. The Queen was quiet for several moments, her compound eyes reflecting the light from the chamber's crystal formations. You are suggesting that we approach the human situation differently. I'm suggesting that maybe the same principles that healed Shimmer could heal the relationship between our species, Sarah replied. Humans aren't rebelling because they're naturally violent. They're rebelling because they're experiencing the same separation anxiety that nearly killed Shimmer. They've been cut off from everything they love and understand. But humans are sentient beings, not pets, the Queen protested. Exactly, which means they need even more autonomy and choice than Shimmer does. They need to feel that their bonds to their homes, their cultures, their ways of life are respected and preserved. Queen Zythera stood from her throne and began pacing. A behavior Sarah had learned indicated deep thought. What you propose would require fundamental changes to our occupation policies. The military command would resist such modifications. But you're the Queen, Sarah pointed out, and you've just learned firsthand that sometimes the gentlest approach produces the strongest results. You would stay and help implement such changes? The Queen asked. Sarah felt the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. This conversation could determine the future of human-Zephyrian relations. I would stay if you committed to treating humanity with the same compassion you showed when you were trying to heal Shimmer. No more relocation camps, no more forced labor. Partnership instead of domination. The Queen stopped pacing and turned to face Sarah directly. "And if I cannot convince the military command to accept such radical changes, then I need to return to Earth and help my people the same way I helped Shimmer, by being present during their time of greatest need." For several long minutes, the only sound in the chamber was the soft humming of the crystal formations. Finally, Queen Zathera spoke. "Your loyalty to your species is admirable, Dr. Chen. It reminds me of Shimmer's unwavering devotion." "Very well. I will call a meeting of the High Command, but I want you present during these discussions. If we are to change our approach to humanity, we will need someone who understands both the science of compassion and the needs of your people." Sarah felt a surge of hope mixed with terror. She was about to become involved in negotiations that could determine the fate of her entire species. "Your Majesty, I'm just a veterinarian. I'm not qualified for interstellar diplomacy. Neither was I qualified to heal a broken heart," the Queen replied with what Sarah had learned to recognize as gentle humor. "Yet we managed to learn together. Perhaps it is time for all of us to expand our capabilities." As they prepared for the most important meeting in human history, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at how far they had all come. A dying alien pet had become the catalyst for potentially revolutionary changes in interspecies relations. Sometimes the smallest acts of compassion really could change the world. That evening, as Sarah sat with Shimmer in the garden chamber, watching the beautiful creature play with her toys and bask in the Queen's attention, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. She had come here expecting to treat a sick animal and return home. Instead, she had become part of something much larger. "What do you think, Shimmer?" Sarah whispered to the Lumacat, who was purring contentedly in the Queen's lap. "Ready to help us heal an entire galaxy?" Shimmer looked up at her with those intelligent eyes and chirped once, as if she understood exactly what was at stake. Tomorrow would bring challenges none of them could fully prepare for, but they would face them together. The High Command meeting took place in the Empire's largest conference chamber, a circular room that could accommodate representatives from dozens of different worlds. Sarah had never seen so many different alien species in one place. Insectoid Zephyrians dominated the gathering, but there were also crystalline beings that looked like living gemstones, gaseous creatures contained in specialized suits, and reptilian humanoids with scales that shifted color as they spoke. Queen Zathera entered with Shimmer at her side, causing a stir among the assembled military leaders. It was unprecedented for the Queen's companion to attend a formal military briefing, but Sarah understood the symbolism. Shimmer represented the success of compassionate healing over force. "Honored commanders," the Queen began, her voice carrying the absolute authority of her position, "we gather today to discuss a fundamental shift in our approach to the human occupation of Earth. Dr. Sarah Chen, the human healer who saved Shimmer's life, will present her recommendations for improving human-Zephyrian relations." A tall Zephyrian with black markings on his exoskeleton stood immediately. "Your Majesty, with respect, military policy should not be dictated by the opinions of a conquered species. The humans have been subdued efficiently and pose minimal threat under current containment protocols." Sarah felt her heart racing, but she forced herself to stand and address the room. "General, may I ask what your ultimate goal is for humanity?" The general's compound eyes focused on her with obvious disdain. "To maintain order and extract maximum productivity from human labor forces, while minimizing resistance and resource expenditure. And how is that working out?" Sarah asked calmly. "Resistance activities have decreased by 60% over the past year," another commander interjected. "Productivity in assigned sectors has increased consistently." Sarah nodded. "Those are impressive statistics. But let me share some observations from my work in the refugee camps. Human productivity appears high because humans are naturally cooperative when they understand their purpose. But the psychological cost is enormous. Depression rates are climbing. Birth rates have dropped dramatically. Suicide attempts have increased by 300%. A murmur went through the assembled commanders. These were statistics they apparently had not been tracking. "Furthermore," Sarah continued, "the humans who are most productive under your current system are those who have essentially given up hope. They work efficiently because they have no energy left for resistance. But beings without hope eventually become beings without the will to live." Queen Zathera stepped forward. "Dr. Chen's analysis is supported by what we learned during Shimmer's illness. When a creature loses its sense of connection and purpose, it begins to die regardless of how well its physical needs are met." "Your Majesty," the black-marked general said firmly, Surely you do not equate the relationship between yourself and your pet with the governance of an entire conquered species. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Queen Zythera's crystalline formations blazed with cold light, and several commanders visibly stepped back. Sarah had never seen the Queen truly angry before. "General Krex," the Queen said in a voice that could have cut steel, "you will not refer to Shimmer as merely a pet. She is my companion, my friend, and my teacher, and the lessons she taught me about the power of compassion over domination are lessons that could benefit our entire empire." Sarah seized the moment. "Your Majesty, may I propose a pilot program? Instead of trying to change everything at once, we could select one human settlement and implement new policies there. Policies based on cooperation rather than coercion." "What kind of policies?" asked a crystalline being whose voice sounded like wind chimes. "Allow humans to return to their homes and resume their previous occupations, but as partners rather than slaves. Establish cultural exchange programs. Let human children attend schools where they can learn both human and Zephyrian knowledge. Most importantly, give humans choices about their futures." General Krex's exoskeleton actually rattled with indignation. "Impossible. The moment we show weakness, human resistance will explode across the planet. Or," Sarah countered, "human gratitude might surprise you. Humans are incredibly loyal to those who treat them with respect and kindness. The same energy that goes into resistance could be channeled into willing cooperation." Commander Vex, who had remained silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. "I have observed Dr. Chen's work closely. Her methods produced results that our technology could not achieve. Perhaps her approach to human relations deserves similar consideration." The debate continued for hours. Some commanders were intrigued by the possibility of reducing military expenditures while increasing human productivity through willing cooperation. Others argued that any sign of softness would lead to rebellion and chaos. Finally, Queen Zythera called for silence. "We will implement Dr. Chen's pilot program in the human settlement of her choosing. Dr. Chen will oversee the transition and report directly to me on the results. If the program succeeds, we will expand it. If it fails, we will return to current protocols. And if it fails spectacularly," General Krex asked pointedly. The Queen's gaze shifted to Sarah, then to Shimmer, who was lying peacefully beside the Queen's throne, despite the heated discussions around her. "Then we will have learned that compassion has its limits. But if it succeeds, we will have discovered something far more valuable than efficient subjugation. We will have found a path to genuine peace." As the meeting concluded, Sarah felt the weight of her species' future settling on her shoulders. She had convinced the most powerful military force in the galaxy to try treating humans with kindness instead of force. Now she had to prove that human nature would respond as she predicted. "Dr. Chen," the Queen said as the chamber emptied, "you have placed an enormous wager on the fundamental goodness of your species. I hope you are correct." "So do I, Your Majesty," Sarah replied, watching Shimmer stretch contentedly in the fading light of the crystal formations. "So do I." The real test was about to begin. Sarah had healed one broken heart, but now she had to heal the relationship between two entire civilizations. The lessons learned in a garden chamber with a grieving queen and her dying companion would either transform the galaxy or lead to catastrophic failure. There was no middle ground. 6 months later, Sarah stood in what had once been a refugee camp and was now a thriving human community. The transformation was remarkable. Families had been reunited with their homes. Children attended schools where human teachers worked alongside Zephyrian educators. The local hospital where Sarah had established her veterinary clinic now served both human and Zephyrian medical needs. The pilot program had not been without challenges. There had been incidents of mistrust, cultural misunderstandings, and moments when Sarah feared the entire experiment would collapse. But each crisis had been resolved through communication rather than force, and each resolution had strengthened the growing bond between the two species. Dr. Chen, called Maria Santos, a former refugee who now served as the community's liaison coordinator, "The Queen's transport is approaching. Are you ready for the final evaluation?" Sarah nodded, though she felt the familiar flutter of nervousness. Queen Zythera was coming to personally assess the success of the compassionate governance model. The results would determine whether this approach would be expanded to all human settlements, or whether humanity would return to the harsh containment protocols. As the royal transport landed, Sarah was surprised to see that Queen Zathera had brought Shimmer with her. The beautiful Lumicot bounded out of the ship with obvious excitement, immediately beginning to explore the new scents and sounds of the human community. "Your Majesty," Sarah said, bowing respectfully, "welcome to New Haven." The Queen's crystalline formations glowed with what Sarah had learned to recognize as pleasure. "Dr. Chen, the changes here are remarkable. When I departed 6 months ago, this was a place of despair. Now I sense hope, creativity, and genuine contentment." As they toured the community, Sarah pointed out the various innovations that had emerged from human-Zephyrian cooperation. Human engineers had learned to work with Zephyrian biotechnology, creating buildings that were both beautiful and incredibly efficient. Zephyrian scientists had been fascinated by human approaches to agriculture, leading to crop yields that exceeded both species' previous achievements. "The most important change isn't visible," Sarah explained as they watched human and Zephyrian children playing together in the Central Park. "It's the absence of fear. When people aren't afraid, they become incredibly creative and productive." Queen Zathera observed a group of children who were teaching Shimmer to play a human game involving throwing and catching a ball. The Lumicot seemed to be enjoying herself immensely, and her joy was infectious to everyone around her. General Krex argued that this cooperation would weaken our military position, the Queen mused. "Instead, we have discovered resources and capabilities we never knew existed. Fear makes people focus on survival," Sarah replied. "But hope makes them focus on possibility. Humans who feel secure and valued will work harder than humans who feel threatened." Commander Vex approached with a datapad filled with statistics. "Your Majesty, the preliminary results are extraordinary. Productivity in New Haven has increased by 200% compared to containment facilities. Resource consumption has decreased by 40% due to innovation and efficiency improvements. Most remarkably, there have been 0 security incidents requiring military intervention." But the most meaningful moment came when they visited the community's new memorial garden. Humans and Zephyrians had worked together to create a space honoring both species' losses during the invasion. Instead of fostering resentment, the shared acknowledgement of grief had become a foundation for mutual healing. "Dr. Chen," the Queen said quietly as they stood among the memorial flowers, "I owe you an apology. When this program began, I believed we were conducting an experiment in human management. I now realize we were actually conducting an experiment in our own growth as a civilization." "What do you mean, Your Majesty?" "The Zephyrian Empire expanded through conquest because we believed it was the only way to ensure our survival and prosperity. But watching your species respond to compassion has shown us that cooperation can achieve what domination never could." The Queen paused, watching Shimmer chase butterflies among the memorial flowers. "We have been thinking like predators when we could have been thinking like partners." That evening, as the community gathered for a celebration dinner, Sarah witnessed something she had never dared to hope for. Humans and Zephyrians sat together, sharing food, stories, and laughter. Language barriers were being overcome through gesture and goodwill. Children of both species played games that neither culture had invented alone. Queen Zathera stood to address the gathering. "Citizens of New Haven, when I first came to your world, I believed that strength could only come through control. But you have taught me that true strength comes from trust. Dr. Chen saved not just my beloved Shimmer, but also showed us all a better way to live among the stars." The Queen then made an announcement that stunned everyone present. Effective immediately, the New Haven model will be implemented across all human settlements. Furthermore, I am establishing the Interspecies Cooperation Council, with Dr. Chen as its first human representative. Our goal will be to extend these principles of compassionate governance to all species within our empire. As applause filled the evening air, Sarah felt tears running down her cheeks. What had started as a simple veterinary emergency had become a revolution in interstellar relations. But the most beautiful moment came when Shimmer, apparently sensing the emotional significance of the occasion, began to sing her haunting melody. One by one, both humans and Zephyrians joined in with their own vocalizations, creating a harmony that had never existed before in the galaxy. Different species, different worlds, different ways of thinking and being, all united in a song of hope and friendship. Later, as the celebration wound down, Sarah found herself sitting with Queen Zathera and Shimmer under the stars. Your Majesty, do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had failed to help Shimmer? The Queen's crystalline formations pulsed thoughtfully. Often, I believe Shimmer's illness was not an accident but a gift. It forced us to confront the difference between mere existence and true living. It taught us that the bonds between conscious beings are more powerful than any weapon or technology. Shimmer stretched contentedly between them, her purring creating a gentle vibration that seemed to resonate with the peaceful community around them. In saving one alien creature's broken heart, Sarah had helped heal the wounds between civilizations. The galaxy would never be the same. As they sat in comfortable silence, watching human and Zephyrian families returning to their homes together, Sarah realized that the greatest adventures often begin with the simplest acts of kindness. Sometimes the most foolish thing you can do is exactly what the universe needs most. The stars seemed brighter that night, as if they too were celebrating the birth of a new kind of interstellar civilization, one built not on conquest but on compassion, one that understood that the strongest bonds are not chains of domination, but threads of mutual care and respect. In the end, it had taken only one foolish human veterinarian who dared to treat an alien queen's beast to change the course of galactic history. But then again, that's exactly the kind of impossible thing that humans have always been best at achieving.